You guys know. You guys know. Arthas is my favorite character in the game. Favorite story to be told in the game. He is the prince of World of Warcraft. But what if he had become the king? What if he had never been corrupted? What if he had actually been, backed up by his friends and not been left alone to purge an entire city of Strathdom? Let's see what Doran, the Teller of Truths, has to say about this speculation.
The fact that Arthas turned evil changed everything we know about World of Warcraft. If he didn't chase
There's only one
Morganis,
king in
Lordran would have almost certainly survived, and he would be king. Quel'Thalas and Sylvanas would survive, there would be no Forsaken, Jaina would never go to Kalimdor, there would be no Alliance presence on Kalimdor. The Alliance would be led by Arthas, the capital would be Lordran, but there would
Basically,
be
the entire world would change. Damn, I didn't even think about that. The Forsaken wouldn't even exist. That's true. Sylvanas wouldn't be a banshee. All that stuff wouldn't have happened.
faction conflict, seeing that they're on different isolated parts of the world. Illidan would never go to Outland, Garrosh would never come to Azeroth, we would never discover Pandaria,
World of Warcraft would have been done.
Hidden, and Azeroth today would be a completely different place. So, what would happen if Arthas wasn't so rash?
I do blame Uther a little bit for what happened to Arthas, to be completely honest. The way he abandoned him and, kind of talked shit to him. I understand Arthas was going off the rails, but still, to walk away... Come on, man. Uther, you had to be stronger than that.
Convert him into a demon. Just like Arthas got corrupted without even knowing about it, the same can happen to you on the internet, but this video sponsor Surfshark can help you prevent that.
Wow.
You can use the VPN to bypass the restrictions.
Look at that ad
Follow
transition.
your favorite websites on vacation. Get much
Even
better
Jaina,
deals on
yeah.
online shopping, as well as staying safe
Humans
and using
versus
public
pandas.
Wi-Fi, and you can of course send and receive files securely. The coolest thing about Surfshark though is that you have unlimited devices, over 3,200 servers in 100 countries, as well as customer support available 24/7.
That's great.
Surfshark is not just a VPN, they're also offering Surfshark Antivirus, Surfshark Alert, Surfshark Search, as well as Alternative ID. So make sure to click the link in the description and use my code DoransMovies, and you will get 4 months completely free. And they're so confident in their service that they're offering a 30-day money-back guarantee.
Samiccus wouldn't exist. Maybe.
Check out Surfshark and stay safe on the internet.
Maybe, without Arthas.
When everyone thinks of this courage, they think about this endless undead army with dragons that destroyed Lordran, that almost took over the entire world, that was one of the biggest threats ever. But I think people don't realize just how much of a scam the Scourge originally was. It literally almost entirely operated on a bluff. They had banked on the character of Arthas being lashed and hot-headed, and because of it, their power had increased tenfold, and that is really why they became such a superpower. There is a reason Ner'zhul chose Arthas as his champion out of all the people on Azeroth.
Well, Ner'zhul probably saw the chance to corrupt Arthas and lead, to the events that would come. But to say that Arthas is the reason that the plague grew, I don't think so. I mean, if Arthas doesn't purge Strathdom, right, the plague grows. Whether he, his purging of it, whether, people want to admit it or not, I'm sure it did set back the spread of the Scourge just a little bit. Inevitably, it did spread from there, but it at that moment, he had kind of cut off a bunch of it, right? Now, maybe there was other ways to do it. He could have quarantined the city or something. As I said, had Uther not been such a bitch boy and actually talked him through the situation, they probably could have figured something out. But Prince Arthas, he was just trying to save his people. Trying to, curb the spread of the virus. At the end of the day, he was the target of the Dreadlords and everything else. So he fell without knowing he was going to fall.
Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the Lich King Ner'zhul was weak. He did have a force, but in a regular invasion, he never really stood a chance against Lordran. He was planted into North, and all of a sudden, he started expanding his physical forces. He got races one by one, but in the War of the Spider, he almost lost against the Nerubians. And keep in mind, Northern...
I'm wondering, since we're going back to an Nerubian Empire, if they're going to mention this at all. The War of the Spider, like this kind of stuff that happened, the fight against the Scourge, because the Nerubians were probably one of the hardest things that Arthas had to deal with. And he eventually did deal with them. He did conquer them by basically raising their undead and finally figuring out a way to do that because they were very much immune to necromancy. But it was a big deal. And we're going to deal with the whole Nerubian Empire. I wonder if we'll get any stories about this.
didn't really have any
I hope we
single
do.
powerful force that was hard to overcome other than the Nerubians. On the other hand, the Eastern Kingdoms were a whole different story. The United Human and Elven Kingdoms had previously managed to repel a much stronger Orcish invasion, Legion invasion, and they kinda knew that was not the way to go again. So, Plan B through the Lich King started, and it worked flawlessly, as they got like the strongest kingdom Lordron to fall from within, and without Arthas and his temperament, this never would have happened. So how did it all really start? Well, it began through Kel'Thuzad and a few agents he managed to get, and the grain shipments that started spreading the plague of undeath that ultimately bolstered their numbers. However, all of this was just a localized threat that started growing more and more, but ultimately, the entire plan of Ner'zhul was not really to convert the entire population of Lordaeron, but it was really to bait Arthas that would then become his agent, and that would then do the real damage. The whole of
The baiting of Arthas
wasn't to get a big
certainly was part of it. I understand that that's the reason that they wanted the prince to fall to their side, to use him to command the armies and all that stuff. Yeah, good plan. But I do still think that if the Scourge had just spread on its own the way it was spreading, yeah, it would have led to the freaking corruption of the entire, Eastern Kingdoms. It would have all became Scourge. I still think Arthas' plan did slightly work in his favor.
For the Scourge or to destroy Lordaeron, but to divide Arthas from his closest allies, to get him incredibly furious, and to chase Morganis with a personal vendetta like this blind vendetta. His chase for Morganis would then lead him to Frostmourne, which was really the original plan, and ultimately this is where Arthas was completely lost. Then Arthas came in with his own undead followers, he murdered the king, his father, which no one saw coming, and this is what really blew Lordaeron apart. What you need to keep in mind though was that Lordaeron was not weak in any stretch of the imagination.
It's the strongest human kingdom at the time. It was the bastion of human society. That's why Lordaeron was it was so important. It was literally the center of the world, basically, at that point.
Lost to the king, Arthas didn't exactly have an easy time accomplishing his goal. He faced a lot of resistance, but at that point it was too late. Many cities were destroyed, the armies were divided, shattered, leaderless, and as is with the nature of undeath, the more you lose, the stronger the enemy becomes. Now this leads us to the topic of this video, and what would have happened if Arthas didn't take the bait, he didn't chase Morganis, and he didn't become a Death Knight? The answer is a whole lot of things, literally everything, and I mean everything would be so
changes
different.
the whole world.
The entirety of Azeroth would be a completely different place right now. So let's begin. It all really started with Stratholme. This was the breaking point. As I said, the entire ploy by the Scourge was a localized threat, and even this late into it, it could have been contained. It was really just the grain, and the undead could have been stopped through quarantine. Keep in mind, when Arthas went with his army to Northrend, Lordaeron didn't exactly fall apart.
Oh man, that's the best thing about it. Yeah, I mean, there would be no jailer plan. Yeah, we wouldn't have to go to the Shadowlands. Maybe Arthas is the reason we had to go there. But jokes aside, it does change the entirety of the world. Lordaeron probably remains the strongest human kingdom to ever exist and to continue to exist at that point. Arthas becomes king, succeeding his father after his father passes away. The kingdoms of human and man remain strong. Who knows what happens with the orcs and Thrall? Jaina maybe could have convinced, because she had, she develops a relationship with Thrall later on, could have convinced Arthas that Thrall isn't bad and orcs aren't bad. Maybe you have peace at that point. Who knows? But certainly the Nathrezim probably knew something, because he was their target, and maybe they didn't want all that peace and everything else. Look at it; the whole world changed with the fall of Arthas.
Overwhelmed with
He is the Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker storyline of World of Warcraft. Without him, there really is no World of Warcraft.
This only happened later, so two big things could have happened at this point in history. Either Arthas did the Purge of Stratholme but wasn't emotionally baited by Morganis, or he didn't do it at all. If he didn't do it, he could have just camped outside a city and would ultimately have to purge the city when it was fully converted. Let's be real, no matter the way you turn it, the way you paint it, there was no easy cure for the city when the plague started spreading. They would have had to do some hard things, but a big event...
At the end, probably the only thing they could have done was like quarantine the city and just leave the people to die. Let the Scourge, let them all convert to Scourge and then starve to death. Because you couldn't have saved anybody. You didn't know who was infected and who wasn't. And if one person gets out, then it spreads from there. There was no easy decisions to have. Uther took the easiest decision and walked away like a little punk. But Arthas made the hard decision. He was like, maybe if I purge this city, I can save lives. Maybe. And then when he realized Mal'Ganis, you have to understand the human emotion behind that. Your whole kingdom is in jeopardy, and then you see Mal'Ganis, who's taking credit for what happened. He goes, "Bitch, come get me. I'm in Northrend." Of course he's gonna chase him. It wasn't about pride or anything. He was just trying to do the right thing, and in the process, got corrupted. Right? It was really Frostmourne that began the corruption process, and then of course he puts on the helm of domination, and he gone. But he was trying to do the right thing, trying to save his people.
Have happened here regardless, there would be no split with Uther and Jaina, and this in itself would have changed everything. They would have had to cleanse the city afterwards together, of course, but Uther would remain as the teacher and the guiding light for Arthas, and Arthas wouldn't feel abandoned by Jaina, and all this would
Uther and Arthas, Obi-Wan, Anakin, same dynamic.
alter his mental state. The mental state is not the only thing here though. Most importantly, Jaina, as she wouldn't go away from Arthas, wouldn't take some of the people and sail to Kalimdor, and instead she would remain on the Eastern Kingdoms.
Yeah, maybe she would have never met Thrall.
Thing here would make everything completely different. There would be no Terramore, there would be no Alliance presence on Kalimdor. Later, Admiral Proudmoore would not have to come, and the entire Rexxar thing wouldn't happen. Now, another event here is crucial that is really hard to say. I mean, originally the orcs came to Kalimdor because Thrall was visited by Medivh that saw what would happen with the Scourge and the Burning Legion to the Eastern Kingdoms. Now, if we do say that Medivh still gave the warning, as he knew the orcs couldn't really establish themselves, the Horde with the Lordaeron around, Thrall would still reach Kalimdor. He would unite the Darkspear and the Tauren, but there would be no humans to fight on Kalimdor. Grom wouldn't attack the humans. He might not have gone on that little lumber mission that really pissed off the Night Elves. I don't think it's likely that the Night Elves would...
Well, but you still... I don't know if the orcs would have never attacked the humans. They might have crossed over, because you still had Fel corruption, right? You still had Gul'dan doing his shit. The Fel... A lot of the orcs were green at that point. They had already drank the Fel, so who knows what kind of corruption could have led them to cross over to the Eastern Kingdoms or do something else to start a war. That was still happening, whether or not Arthas was corrupted or not. As Uther said in the beginning, you can't let vengeance control you. Arthas let vengeance overcome him. Yeah, basically. He was the chosen one. It was said that he would control the Sith, not join them. Exactly. Same lines, different things. This Radiant Echoes event gives it... It's insane, isn't it?
They obviously joined the Horde. They might have been enemies of the Orcs, Tauren, and the Trolls, but they certainly wouldn't have joined the Alliance in any way. It's very likely that the Night Elves would be some type of a neutral race, like the Dryads or the Furbolgs, for example. However, before we get into the geopolitical state of Azeroth, let's go back to Arthas here. I'm almost certain if Arthas didn't chase Mal'Ganis to Northrend, the threat would have eventually been contained. It wouldn't have been done easily, that is for certain. There might have been a few more cities that would fall to the Scourge, just like Stratcom, but ultimately they would manage to contain the threat, as keep in mind, Lordaeron was quite strong at this point in time. Now,
here's the thing though, when it comes to sickness, right? I mean, shit, we learned it with COVID. When it comes to sickness, it doesn't matter how strong your empire might be, a sickness can infiltrate it from within, and that's a problem. So I don't know the whole theory that if Arthas didn't, get corrupted, the Scourge wouldn't have spread. That's a stretch. I think it still would have been a major problem. And as he said, maybe they could have quelled it, but it would have taken a lot of effort. Maybe. But there's also that chance that one guy gets into that Lordaeron throne room, is infected and doesn't know it, and then bam, it's over. Everyone gets infected, and then it's the end.
Without the expedition to Northrend, Magni Bronzebeard would have certainly fallen with no one to save him, and this would drastically affect the dwarves, but Arthas wouldn't take Frostmourne. Now, it's likely that Ner'zhul would find someone else to take.
You have to get down with it.
Take Frostmourne, but I don't think this other agent would have had nearly as big of an impact as Prince Arthas. Now, here's the thing. With the news of Stratholme and the undead threat, it is likely that the other humans, even as far as Stormwind, would do more to help eventually. Seeing that Stratholme is really close to Lothal, they might have allied with the elves as well in a much more open manner to help contain this. Once again,
yeah, maybe the elves the elves can't join the Horde because there is no Horde. There hasn't been a crossover of Kalimdor and the Eastern Kingdoms. So, yeah, maybe The elves still
Arthas
help.
was a huge regional power. The Scourge barely managed to destroy it even with Lordaeron gone. Additionally, Dalaran was incredibly powerful as well, and it would remain with Antonidas as the leader. Now, with all the big powers in the Eastern Kingdom, I think they would be able to extinguish the budding undead threat, and now Ner'zhul's power would really be contained in Northrend. The thing is though, without destroying like 90% of Lordaeron and Quel'Thalas, there would be no serious undead force to do anything that big. I don't think Ner'zhul would stand a single chance by trying to do an outright invasion from the sea with like ships and flying mounts, but it's likely that the constant incursions would have eventually forced an expedition to Northrend to finally deal with the threat. Remember, Arthas went to Northrend on his own. He was recalled by Terranas. He didn't listen. Here, there would be a serious organized force of the humans, the elves, and they really could have easily stopped Ner'zhul.
Yeah, it would have been more organized, most certainly. He wouldn't have gone with just like a little crack squad like he went with. And maybe, you know, even though he, in this storyline, he doesn't take the bait, doesn't purge the city, the corruption of Frostmourne, it would still be whispering. That would still exist. But maybe if he had other people with him, I mean, he did have his best friend with him and he killed him. But maybe if there had been a bigger force or something, he wouldn't have been as insanely motivated to chase down Mal'Ganis. Like, all the what-ifs could have happened, and he never picks up Frostmourne. That could be a thing.
At least it will be a big battle akin to Wrath of the Lich King, and very likely, Ner'zhul would ultimately be defeated. However, you need to remember that the entire point of Ner'zhul
What is this? What?
was to facilitate a Burning Legion invasion. Seeing that this didn't happen, everything would change. Either the Legion would have to invade another way, or they might have come to save Ner'zhul instead of trying to destroy him. This would drastically alter Illidan and his goal, and the entire Outland scenario might have never been explored. Still, if the Legion invasion happened, it might have happened in Northrend, and it would have played out completely different. Now, without the Archimonde attack on Kalimdor, there would really be no union of the Horde and the Alliance. Most importantly, the Alliance itself would probably never unite as it did. First of all, with Quel'Thalas still being a thing, Sylvanas would just be a High Elven
Yeah,
ranger,
she wouldn't
and
be a
there
Banshee.
would be no Forsaken. The humans and the elves would control the Eastern Kingdoms, and there would be zero Horde presence here. The Alliance wouldn't have much of a reason other than the Scourge to become as powerful as it did, and even if it did, the power would pool around Lordaeron, not Stormwind. It's likely that Terranas and Arthas would be the true leaders of the Alliance, while they are...
Varian could be a leader. Varian and Arthas grew up together. Like, that was a thing. They used to, like, duel each other when they were kids. And Varian used to win a lot of the times. And he was younger than Arthas. But Varian ascends the throne. No, I think Stormwind and Lordaeron would have been very close. They were friends, like I said, growing up.
Wouldn't be that big of a deal. The Alliance capital would be the capital city of...
I agree that the Alliance capital would be Lordaeron, but I do think Stormwind would be second in command because of Varian's relationship with Arthas and, you know, just proximity, not to mention they're probably the second strongest.
Lordaeron. Now, seeing that Terranas was very old, it's likely that Arthas would ultimately become a king in a few years, and he would be something akin to Varian or Anduin, and he really would be the leader of the Alliance. Regardless, I don't think the factions would be as emphasized as they are today. The Horde would be entirely contained on Kalimdor, while the Alliance would be entirely contained on the Eastern Kingdom. They might not have any contact whatsoever. Just like how the humans never really had any interactions with the Night Elves over the thousands of years, despite
the Night Elves might have never joined the Alliance. I forgot about that.
Fact that they lived on the same planet,
on the opposite side.
No reason for the Alliance to even go to Kalimdor. Also, very likely the entire Scourge Legion invasion would be strictly an Alliance thing. Just this fact alone would change every single expansion that ever happened after that. No faction conflict in Classic. As I said, with Illidan doing something completely different or very likely still being imprisoned, there would be no Burning Crusade, there would be no Outland. With Ner'zhul defeated, there would be no Wrath of the Lich King. Very likely Pandaria would never be discovered without the faction conflict, and also there would be no Garrosh, as we wouldn't go to Outland. Now, after this, it is impossible to really predict anything. Almost certainly the Legion would invade again, and both factions would get involved.
As I said before, the Legion would still be a problem. Fell corruption and the Legion would still be the main thread line that continues forward.
It would be
even without
so
the Scourge.
drastically different that it would really be a different game. So really, when you think about it, the fact that Arthas decided to chase Mal'Ganis to Northrend changed the world possibly even more than the Sundering of Azeroth itself. Thank you for watching. Check out all the other niggas that
Very
watch
true.
YouTube by clicking on the screen, and check out my video on Ancient Thing by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time.
You know, saying like, what if Arthas was never corrupted? What if he stayed, you know, a good boy? It's the same as saying, you know, what if the Skywalker saga never happened in Star Wars? What if Anakin never fell to the dark side and became Darth Vader? Like, it changes everything. There is no Star Wars without Darth Vader. There is no World of Warcraft without the Lich King. So, very much two stories that are intertwined in the same way. And it's fun to speculate, but at the end of the day, the prince does fall, and he does become the Lich King.